Hello again. Our government is once again promising to solve the country's energy crisis. The ongoing blackouts have been exacerbated by the lack of diesel supplies and the funds to pay for it. President Ramaphosa and his ministers have been punting the just energy transition as a solution. But are we ready for it? Let's unpack this further. I'm joined now by energy expert Jacob Maroga. He's a former Eskom CEO, as well as Vuslat Bayoglu, who is the CEO of Menar, a private investment company. Gentlemen, good afternoon. Welcome to today. Thank you very much for your time. My first question to you, and I want to hear both your answers to it. What is just energy transition? How should we define this thing? I mean, I don't think we in the media have spent enough time trying to understand it. We sort of get it with the headlines when there's COP27 or the Eskom, there's load shedding, and then we talk about coal-fired power stations, we talk about diesel. But I just want to get a view from you. How would you, Ntate Maroga, define just energy transition?
Good afternoon, Braden. Just energy transition is basically an attempt to transition from coal to renewables, but in a way that the impact on the people that are affected is minimized. I think that's the simplest explanation I can give to just energy transition.
Okay, Mr. Bayoglu?
Good afternoon. From my side, I think it's the attempt to decarbonize the world as quick as possible, mainly from fossil fuels, and trying to do it, like I said, as soon as possible to stop burning coal, to stop burning gas, to stop burning diesel in our cars. So that's, in a nutshell, what is called just energy transition.
Okay, are we ready for it in South Africa? I mean, are we doing the right things, Mr. Bayoglu?
I think South Africa is not ready for just energy transition. If you look at our current problems with the coal-fired power capacity not available because boilers have not been maintained, I don't know how Eskom or how government is thinking that the problem is going to be solved if we shut coal-fired power capacity completely. Because if we at least have them and if we maintain them, we will be able to create baseload. But by shutting them down completely, when we need baseload, and I don't know where the baseload is going to come from, I don't understand their plan, but where are we going to get the baseload? At least we now, if we can maintain the coal-fired power capacity and the boilers, then we will have some power. But when we shut them down and replace them with solar panels and replace them with wind turbines, I don't know where the baseload is going to come from. So I think South Africa is not ready for just energy transition.
But transition, Ntate Maroga suggests you moving somewhere over a period of time. To transition, it's not like immediate. What is your view? Are we ready for this just energy transition?
Well, I think it's bigger than ready. It's whether the way we are planning to do it, is it appropriate for South Africa? Will it not leave South Africa's energy security in a bit of a risk? Would it not impact the economy? Would it not impact society? So I think, for me, those are the key questions, because the way it's been planned, in my view, I think is been hastened, is rushed. I don't think it's well considered. And I agree with Vuslat that at the moment, switching off our coal baseload in a hurry, it is not the right thing to do. Yes, I think increasing the profile of renewables in South Africa is a good thing, but I don't think the speed at which we want to do it is appropriate for South Africa.
Yeah, I saw a comment the other day about saying that we are moving towards this energy transition as a country, but we don't even have an integrated just energy transition plan. How do you respond to that, Ntate Maroga?
Well, there is a just energy transition investment plan that has been issued by the presidency. But mainly it talks to how much is it going to cost, how much borrowings are going to be allowed in South Africa, and it was presented at COP27. But when you look at the details, particularly the shift from coal to renewables. That's where, for me, there are concerns in terms of the speed at which it has to be, they want to do it. It may leave South Africa very vulnerable from an energy security perspective. Yes.
Yeah. So just let's talk about coal-fired power stations. We know the state of Eskom stations. They've told us we see it. We are feeling the impact with the current rolling power cuts. The Russia-Ukraine war has put somehow a spanner in the works, if I may say so, because the largest emitters of carbon emissions, Mr. Bayoglu, are the industrialized nations. And now with Russia shutting off the gas supply to Germany, they are now relying on coal. I was just speaking to about Transnet last week, and we're finding out that through Richards Bay, we are now exporting more coal to Germany or parts of Europe than we've done. And Mozambique had its first shipment of natural gas 2 weekends ago. So I mean, how do we balance that? I mean, we haven't emitted as much carbon as the industrialized world, and the industrial world currently is now relying on coal again. Mr. Bayoglu, what are your comments on that?
Yes. I think there's a huge hypocrisy in this whole thing, because South Africa started moving a lot of coal to Europe after Russia cut the gas to Europe because they needed to bring the coal-fired power capacity back into operation. They don't have many other choices. Either they will rely on France's nuclear power, which is old power stations, so they are also having issues. So they decided, most of the European countries decided, like including Spain, Denmark, Germany, Holland, they started bringing their coal-fired capacity back. So this Russia-Ukraine crisis, which ended up like Russia cutting the gas or Europe not buying the gas from Russia, exposed the issues with renewable energy. Renewable energy is great. It complements the base load, but on its own, it doesn't produce the power that an industrialized country needs, or any country needs. Because if you look at Germany, Germany has got about 140,000 megawatt solar and wind capacity, and without gas, it doesn't mean much. That's why Germany restarted their coal-fired power capacity. So the biggest question that we must ask ourselves in South Africa as South Africans, what are we doing? I mean, Germany is vulnerable now. They've got a very vulnerable energy grid system because they don't have the gas. So where are we going to get our base load if we get rid of coal? We don't have gas in this country. We will rely on Mozambique or Tanzania or any other country that's producing gas. We don't have nuclear capacity available. So that's the question that we need to ask ourselves.
Yeah, and of course, Eskom the other day, Tata Maroga, announcing they don't have any money anymore to ban diesel. And it raises all kinds of issues, because if you can't run the power stations, what are you going to do? We can't not have energy stability.
Yes, I think what underlies the issue of diesel is that Eskom, as a regulated entity, has a budget, regulated budget for all of their fuels, including diesel. Now, they've blown their diesel budget, so they can't run any more diesel. So they are saying we can't, if we have to load shed, we have to load shed. We can't use diesel because we've blown our budget. That's just a regulatory fact. But I think the key issue is, what is more important, energy security or the books or the financial books of Eskom? And hence, I think the minister stepped in to say they will find money for diesel to ensure that they don't do as worse load shedding as they now do. And those are the kind of discussion that I think Eskom, or the kind of things that Eskom has to balance between security of supply and their own financial sustainability.
Yeah, so just to conclude, I mean, just as we come to an end of our discussion here, the President and his delegation are in the UK currently, and there is, among other discussions, there's a whole issue of this energy transition, just energy transition, and a British company will be coming here, I understand, to be part of the renewable journey, the journey towards renewables with 6 solar power projects. That is happening at whatever pace that is happening. Should we accept, Mr. Bayoglu, that South Africa must have a hybrid model going forward. That the energy mix must not exclude coal at all, and the transition should not be as hasty as Mr. Maroga says, but we should be pacing ourselves. So we put a developmental lens in the just energy transition process.
Exactly. Coal is important for South African energy mix. We have very cheap coal to mine, so that can be burnt in either private or Eskom boilers, and we can really produce cheap energy out of coal. And the renewable energy will always have a place in the whole mix. But the reality is we also have certain other goals, as like to deal with the gap between rich and poor. You can't really do much if you don't have cheap power, if you don't have power available. So we need to make sure that we got power available and that power is cheap, and we also make sure that people are employed through all these jobs Eskom created, and Eskom will carry on employing the people. And so we can't just look at, okay, look, how do we do the net zero goal? We can't only look at that. We have to look at the social impacts of this carbon net zero targets.
Yeah, so moving from a high carbon environment to a low carbon environment it has to be carefully managed. Dr. Maroga, any other point we might not have covered in less than a minute?
Well, look, I think I agree with everything that Vuslat has said. Where we are from an economic development perspective, we need to make sure we don't rush into things that will not allow us to develop into a bigger industrialized country, while other countries have already developed. I think that's the important thing that we must consider in this just transition.
Thank you very much, Jacob Maroga and Vuslat Bayoglu, for your time and insights here this afternoon on Today on eNCA. Of course, Mr. Maroga is a former Eskom CEO, and Mr. Bayoglu is the CEO of Menar, a private investment company. Just energy transition is important, but as a developing country, we have to make sure we're not rushing things, and we can't just shut down the coal-fired power stations. They're important in the mix, and that's the message that's coming through. But renewables as well will have to come on stream at some time in future to balance the picture. This country still has to develop. We have jobs to create. We have to close the gap between the poor and the rich.